effort. Third item, Ukraine. We are deeply concerned by the deteriorating situation in Shyrokyne, which is near Mariupol, where the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission reported on April 26th that monitors observed the most intense shelling since fighting began in the area in mid-February of this year, that is. Russia-backed separatists continue to shell Ukrainian forces and refuse the OSCE mission unfettered access. These are clear violations of the ceasefire and the Minsk agreements that they signed. And as the OSCE has made clear, access for the monitoring mission is not subject to negotiations. It is the mission's duty and their task. At the same time, Russian and separatist forces maintain a sizable number of artillery pieces and multiple rocket launchers within areas prohibited under the Minsk Accords. Also, the Russian military has deployed additional air defense systems into eastern Ukraine and moved several of these nearer the front lines. This is the highest amount of Russian air defense equipment in eastern Ukraine since August. Russia is also once again building up its forces along its border with Ukraine. The United States has been clear that the Minsk agreements remain the best chance for a lasting and comprehensive solution to the crisis in eastern Ukraine, and we call again on Russia and the separatists it backs to implement their commitments under the agreements. One final media issue. With World Press Freedom Day less than a week away. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Jeff. Regarding your comments on Ukraine, you seem pretty adamant that Minsk II is being violated. Could you clarify, were you saying that specifically who this building thinks is violating it? Are we talking the Russia-backed separatists or also the Ukrainian military, and a follow-up to that as well?
Well, again, it's clear if we just look at the situation near Shyrokyne, which is near Mariupol. In other words, it is well outside, well beyond the ceasefire line. The Russia-backed separatists continue to fire on Ukrainian government forces, and that's a clear violation of the Minsk agreements. And I think we've spoken separately last week about the ways in which Russian forces, Russian personnel are working together with the separatists in eastern Ukraine. So I think that the situation there is pretty clear.
Murmurings from various voices in the U.S. government and the administration about imposing or leveling some new slate of sanctions on Russian individuals and possibly even businesses and government entities if Minsk II was repeatedly violated. It sounds like you're saying it has been. I wonder if you can give us an update or a sense of where we're at with that sanctions conversation. Is there movement towards it, perhaps?
Well, the sanctions, of course, are connected to the presence in eastern Ukraine of the separatists and the Russian and their Russian backers. I don't have new sanctions announcements to make, but of course the sanctions are linked to implementation of Minsk, and there's no way the sanctions can be rolled back unless Russia and the separatists live up to their Minsk commitments.
And I'm not talking about rolling back. I'm talking about possibly adding more.
I understand. I don't have any new sanctions announcements to make, though.
Thank you.
Well, I don't have any information to add to what we shared last week on the air defense systems. I'm happy to go through that again, but I don't have new information.
Yeah, but you're saying that the number of them has increased. Is that correct?
Right. This is the highest amount of Russian air defense equipment in eastern Ukraine since August. Yes. Yeah. Go ahead.
Last week, I think in the statement you referred, in not you, but this department, referred to combined Russian separatist forces, I think 3 times in a single statement, which seemed to be a closer linkage than maybe identified in the past. And in light of that, I'm wondering if this activity near Mariupol is the result of Russian-backed separatists, as you just indicated, or this combined Russian separatist force that you outlined last week?
Mm-hmm. Well, let me separate those two a little bit, because it is you're right to recall that we see the Russian presence in eastern Ukraine has been part of increasingly complex training of separatist forces. This training also incorporates, for example, Russian UAVs, which is also a clear sign of Russia's Russia's presence. And so we see, increasingly the Russian and separatist forces, the Russian command and control presence and equipment in eastern Ukraine also, is why we've described it as combined Russian and separatist forces. Now, with respect to the question of the current artillery activity around Shyrokyne, I don't have information to draw a conclusion about whether that is separatist activity or Russian separatist combined forces. What we were describing in the information we put out last week was the overall situation in eastern Ukraine. I can go back and look and see if we have more detail on Shyrokyne.
That would be helpful.
Okay, we'll do that.
I would ask as well, I mean, do you hold, despite you're not at this point willing to call that a combined Russian separatist force or offensive, do you hold Russia ultimately responsible for this latest offensive?
Well, again, we've said for a long time that Russian support to the separatists is essential to the military activity they've been able to carry out. We've seen that throughout the conflict. Again, I don't have data at my fingertips with regard to the makeup of the forces who are shelling Ukrainian positions well outside the ceasefire lines. We'll look to see if we can get that. But I think in the overall situation, it's quite clear that Russia's support is essential.
Without getting into the force makeup, do you see this latest attack as a product of the Russian command and control operations that you've identified in recent days?
Mm-hmm. Okay, I understand the question. We'll look into that and come back to you. Same topic, Russia, Ukraine? No?